to just cover briefly the process of masking off trim, whether it be baseboard or door casings, anything that you don't want paint on. A lot of people struggle with the taping process. They have paint come seeping through the area where the tape meets the wall, and a lot of the problem is sometimes related to the tape used and the process in which it was applied. Simply by pressing a piece of tape with your finger against the wall, it's just not going to be sufficient enough to keep the paint when it's wet from seeping in the gap there. One little tip I want to mention about masking tape: it's best to store tape in a plastic bag, whether it be a Ziploc bag or whatever, to keep the moisture from being absorbed into the roll of tape. If a roll of tape does become damp, another problem you're going to have is when you pull this tape off of your trim, sometimes the adhesive will stay on the trim and the paper portion of the tape will come off separately, and that could take a lot of time trying to get it off your trim. So what I like to do is I work basically with a strip of tape. I'll pull it off like this, and I will, basically use a portion that as far as I could reach from my left hand to my right hand. But for this demonstration, I'm going to use just a, 18 inches or so piece of tape. So you just want to basically keep your left hand, for example, in my case, you want to keep this part away from the wall and bring in your right hand closer to the wall first. And you don't want to be pulling real tight. You just want to kind of let the tape, basically dangle between your two fingers, gently holding it. So you want to get your first piece in against the tight against the wall, while you keep your left hand up off of the base. You could gently tack it down over here on the left side, and use your thumb, come somewhere in the middle and give it a light press, and then just lightly use your thumb and slide it across, and then the next pass you can do it a little bit tighter, and now we have the piece of masking tape pretty much firmly placed against the top edge of the baseboard. Now this isn't going to be sufficient from when you start cutting in with wet paint, because like in this example, this piece of baseboard actually has a gap there between the wall and the baseboard. I could almost stick the 5-in-1 tool down between the two. So if you're cutting this with paint, it's just gonna flow behind there. So what you want to do is use a 5-in-1 tool. You can pick these up at the paint store. They're relatively inexpensive, maybe $1, $2. They have some fancy ones that are a lot more expensive. But what you want to do is you want to hold this blade. Let me try to show an example here. If this was the edge of the tape on the base, you want to hold the knife in a position slightly angled. So you could set it right into the wall edge, and just lightly holding this on an angle, press firmly that edge. Now you don't want to do it in this way, because obviously I'm not making contact with the edge that I need tightly sealed. And you don't really want to do it perfectly level either, because if the back portion edge of the baseboard has any kind of rough edge or anything, you're not going to make good contact with it. So just keep the edge of the blade on an angle and press into the corner tight. Now in this case we have a really dark wall color against white trim, and these walls are going to be second coated with the same color. And because the color is generally on the wall. It's just not perfect. It doesn't look right yet. It does need a second coat. When we cut our baseboard here, we're going to do a very light cut in with wall paint against this base edge. We're going to have sort of a dry brush in a way, wet enough to glide, but it's not going to be a fully loaded brush that will allow paint to fall down behind this gap. And when we pull our tape and the paint on the wall dries, we're going to run such a fine bead of caulk along this edge to close up that gap. So basically this is all ready for paint. You just don't want to go heavy with paint when you're anywhere near the edge of the tape. So when you go to pull this, you're going to want to just try to pull in an upward motion slowly and remove the masking tape. And generally what we do is when we're painting walls, we could probably paint a room maybe within the hour. I would suggest pulling the tape back off. Now if masking tape does stay on too long, it could be difficult to remove, and in that case what you could use is you could use a breakaway razor blade and score this portion of the edge. You could use your 5-in-1 tool, and what you want to do is basically just run it inside the edge to break away the seal between the dried paint on the tape and the wall. And when you pull that off, you'll get a nice clean edge. Otherwise, if you don't, the paint that is dried on the wall between the base could tear the paint upward across the wall, and that will create more mess. So that's pretty much it for masking tape. Make sure your surface is nice and clean. If you have woodwork that's stained, it has maybe pledge or some other cleaner to deepen up the color of your wood or whatever, you want to make sure you remove that. Something good that works on that is mineral spirits paint thinner. Use some rubber gloves to remove it. If you don't want to get into paint thinner, you could use Pine Sol works and a product called Lest Oil.